So this is Reflections 1. Reflections, this part of the project is, you might look at it as for my own personal consumption. That's why you're not going to find this material in the any of the percussion videos, composition, none of that. You won't find these videos there. These are my hindsight sort of ideas, and when they were made, and how I was looking at the entire project as a whole, and how it's moving forward. And so I got a lot of ideas. I've been actually writing all sorts of notes. I get into a cognitive mode, and what I mean by that is drawing out diagrams of social structure models, for example, and looking at also models of percussion and looking at the components of them, etc., and describing models and how each component works together. But I've got some really cool ideas about personal projects that I'm working on, the things that I do during the daylight hours, so to speak. And yeah, I got some really neat stuff here, actually. And so I'm in cognitive mode, and I'm looking into what it is I'll be doing with the project as it moves forward, actually based on what's been done so far, and you know, my evaluation of it at this point. Instead of just continuing to add things and add things and add things and add things, this is kind of like a break point and a temporal sort of juncture where you know, I have an opportunity to look at what I have and make some decisions about it. So I'm definitely going to add a section on the influences John Henry Bonham would have as a musician, being where he lived at, and the media that he had access to, and the channels that it was on, and get an idea of what was sort of fueling his furnace, so to speak, culturally and musically. And I would beg to differ that he was heavily influenced by South African beats and also Indian. So they, as artists at a young age, they most likely were exposed to those kinds of sounds in the landscape of the music culture. So therefore, they would have explored them and had a good look at them. So I think a section on South African and the native Indian compositions. In South African, it's going to be more call response drums. That is African root and communication using percussion. It's call response, and then in the Indian genre, what you have is repetitive patterns, ragas, things of that nature. If you care to take time to fully explore even one of those methods of percussion, you know, it's all sorts of stuff's available out there on the internet. But the section that I'm going to put in the John Henry Bonham project is going to look at a few different artists in the Indian genre, and also listen to the rhythms and the percussion there, and the methods used to fill the sound. We'll discuss things like what the drone is in the music arrangement, And then in the South African aspect of it, listen to some both, not only things that are Delta blues, sort of the slavery in America or slavery anywhere, blues, lyrical literature, art, those emotional responses, literally in music, and you know, go a step back further and not only talk about what has popularized the blues, which is actually a vehicle through slavery in modern media, things that are readily consumable, so to speak. Go back further even to the roots of where these people that had been enslaved came from, and think about the connections that are made within the context of the music that they're playing, their cultural sort of smear, if you will, how they transitioned culture, root culture, into what it was they were doing at the time, and how that again has also moved on to other areas of music development over time. So in the Indian and the South African aspect of it, we're going to go from patterns, ragas, etc., to the roots of African culture called response percussion, and look at them both, and then you know, think about techniques and methods, and think about time, rhythm, and measure, and balance, and think about perhaps adopting that paintbrush to your toolbox, so to speak. A methodology of playing that you know, once you master it, you can insert it anywhere you want to in a composition. And so that being said, that's where I'd like to move on. But in hindsight of what I'm doing right now with composition, technology integration, and percussion 101, I'm thinking that first of all, start with percussion 101. I think that went best. Well, you know, it's an introduction to what's going on, and when someone is sort of led through a learning space, they need to be initially, you know, shown on the table things that are immediately interesting for them to learn. And any percussionist who would visit upon the site, the ideology is the mean user, people who, you know, are going to be looking at this seriously, will be percussionists. So what would interest percussionists? Those who are learning. There's a select group of that whole bit of people called percussionists. There's a slice of it that is actually people who are percussionists who are actually actively learning and seeking out information that they can consider in their own development, playing percussion. So that's what the content's focused on there. And so taking it from the ground up, thinking about balance at first. I mean, and that's playing the instruments themselves, not necessarily playing with the drums. It's two different concepts there. Playing with the drums is kind of like, you know, it's sort of like a novelty, so to speak. And, you know, you make some noise with it, and you get some pretty good, cool stuff going on there every now and then. And, you know, and it drives you. It's fun, and you keep doing it. It's like more like an amusement park, kind of like entertainment, release, fun thing. But then there's, you know, a perspective where you want to actually break it all down and stop really having fun with it, because if you look in hindsight of what you were having fun with, it probably didn't dial into what the music was actually playing. Just looking at it more holistically and actually more comprehensively. And so that's what I want to do with starting with balance. It's where you are before you even start playing. So I think that the exercises that I put up so far are good. I think if anybody really interested in it, willing to put forth the effort of attempting what it is that I'm demonstrating in those videos, you know, I'm leaving some subjectivity there for them to explore their own ideas. You know what I mean? I'm not dragging anybody through the learning space by the back of their neck. I just want them to, I want people who are going through it to comprehend what it is and where I'm going, and if they want to, you know, TikTok around, you know, follow along, they can. But also with the freedom to explore their own ideas and developing their own percussion. I think that's very important. So I think the first 3 videos after the introduction work through that really well, really focusing on hammering home balance, and then expression after that through technique and time and rhythm. So, you know, in melody, it all comes together. So I think that's a good starting point there. In terms of composition, I think I'm doing very well as well. I mean, you could see that I just dove into it because I've been wanting to do this for so long. The workflow that I had previously just was just hair-brainingly frustrating. And I need to move in a pace of developing content and publishing it as I come onto it in my own learning experience. When I come onto something and then I'm detained trying to get the media out, well then everything becomes blurred and it's really hard to assemble the content that way. So that being said, now that things are moving along with the technology that I'm using to put together this project, and how I have everything networked and how I'm going through it all with the own learning myself, I'm really happy with it. It's really taken a really bright turn. So I'm really interested in what I'm doing right now with all the new software and how I'm capable of applying it to making music. It's very exciting. A lot more problems were solved than I had originally anticipated. The first problem I wanted to solve was simply being able to produce media faster so that I could run with the ball, so to speak, and get things out there to the public. And then, you know, once I went through the training for that, I realized how many new doors and windows it opened up with the environment that I'm occupying now. There's a lot of different opportunities now for me. So I'm way off the hook excited about that. And you know, that's working out well. I got Logic X nailed up. I got it figured. I got the MIDI here on the pad figured. My next step is to figure out the MIDI on the MIDI sender downstairs. It's both using the MIDI wire up through the DAW. Well, that's the DAW, but patching it from the input source to the Focusrite, mapping it through the Sapphire and plugging it into the channels up here. I got that part of it figured out. This part of it here is rather easy actually. I've done it previously. It's just I haven't done it systematically. You know, I plugged around in it, you know, bam, hit on it. And so what I need to do is really take a close look at that and step at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and just know exactly what I'm doing to set up those channels every time. And once I do set them up once, I can just go ahead and save that instance and then use it repetitively after a like it's a template or something, and then reset it for different things if I wanted to. But in any case, that's where I'm at now with that. I need to take that downstairs, which is my brain. That's the that at the moment. I need to take my brain downstairs and get the MIDI cord and plug it in and see what happens. And then there's also a Sapphire course that I want to take. As I mentioned, I got some ideas on how I can hook up, but it's also got some other things in there floating around that are there, but they're not really intuitive. So I need to take a course on it and figure out a few other things that I may have opportunity there to utilize in that aspect of it. The composition part, I'm having fun with that. I think coming in from like the perspective of juvenile, After studying young adult literature and really having an interest in looking at the kind of genres and what's objectified in the literature, the goals, and it's really a really neat slice of human life, young adult literature is, and thinking about the world that way and developing content that fits into it uniquely, sort of, but in genre and positively something. I think that's really a cool thing. So, taking that a step further and not only integrating that, but also integrating from kindergarten up, like a fairy tale kind of thing with Moby Dick for children. I think that's a really cool project, and the end of it will be something I'll be happy that I did. I can, this is really a good project for me to get involved with right now. Over things that I've done in the past personally, I did a documentary on history of this town and the transportation systems, and the theme running through it was transportation systems. I want to make sure the camera's running. Cool. And the theme running through it was transportation systems. So what I initially did was I went to resource libraries and had access to not only stacks, physical stacks here in town, but also digital copies of them here in town, and also an extended library out to a lot of other universities all over the U.S. actually. So you can look at a big card catalog, so to speak, but this is all digital now, and searching for it that way. And I got a lot of information on not only transportation development over time in the big world, but also how transportation was also integrated here into the city, like statistics on how many automobiles there were and when, and and motorcycles, when were they introduced into the city, how many of them were there, even profile people, like who owned the first motorcycle in this city, because people know them around here, it's recorded. So I did that project, and I can remember getting up at 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning before I go to classes, and sitting in a little apartment with a microphone hanging down in the dark, just gathering all this media on the internet and dragging stuff into files and assembling it and writing, the voiceover for the progression forward through history and the whole 9 yards. And I just worked on it consistently until it was done. I could see it kind of took me on a journey too, because as I was developing it, I didn't know exactly what it was going to become until it was done. Because as I was developing the media, I was building the video of the documentary, I was actually going out and continuing the research aspects of it. I get an idea about, the path that should be on there, about motorcycles, for example. So yeah, I get motorcycles, got to have it in there. And then research the motorcycles who had them in Morgantown. And then, one of the earliest people, Ralph Furman. I had an opportunity to interview him personally. And so, as part of the project, I really get into it. And I called the phone number in the local phone book here, and Ralph Furman. I thought maybe his son would answer. And because this is a really old fellow when I did this in 2008. And actually, Ralph Furman answered. And I said, through the initial stumble into conversation, it was actually him. He was 92. And he was really jolly because he had worked. He had got up really early in the morning, like before the sun. And he has, he has a farm that he runs tractors on and grows and cuts hay. And he had. And so he had already been up that morning prior to sunrise, and he had already put in 9 hours of work when I called him that day. And so he was a sprite old fella. And he was very accepting of me, and we had a good rapport, and so I enjoyed filming him and going out and talking to him, and understanding the way he sees things, his wisdom, and appreciating it. And because he was really a unique, cool fellow. The center of the city is kind of like encroaching out, it's sprawl. And he's right below where the airport is. the airport, and this is hitting the airport. It's right below where the airport is. It's a big hill there. It's in West Virginia. He's down in the bottom gully of it there, and this is a big area we're talking about. And there's a road coming down around there, and a major road here and there, and then the interstate up there. And all this stuff is growing out around him, and he's got this little farm. He's got his cows in there. He has everything in there. And right on the corner is the building where there was a blacksmith shop that his dad ran. And his dad, before the automobiles, before he had his motorcycle, before there was the motors here in the city, his dad, he was kind of like the service station dude, because people would bring their horses in to put new shoes on them. So he was part of the service sector for transportation back in the day. And that building was still there. The roof was all caved in and everything, but it was there. And then his house and his cows and stuff like that. And there was a road right between his property there, West Glen Road, divided his property. But he had things going on both sides. And other than that, you know, he just existed on that farm right in the middle of the city there, kind of. And well, the city isn't real big, don't get me wrong. This isn't Chicago or anything. But you could really see, you know, how the city was coming out and how he was just, you know, holding his own as he lived his life out, which was really cool. So I want to see if this video is running one more time and cap this up. Okay. So what I'm getting at, I guess, in the bottom is I'm really enjoying doing this project. I need it now, and it's something I've really been wanting to do for a long time. And I think off the cuff is the best approach, because I think I'm better off the cuff with you know, how I think that it is best to put together a few tasks, and in coming from a training perspective and an instructor perspective, but also in terms of a exploratory kind of professor, if you will, to, you know, think about other ideas other than just technique. Think about how you're going to apply them. Think about the literature involved. Think about the whole scope of what music is while you're learning about how to play the drums. And so I think I'm going in a good direction. I'm really happy with it. So this is Reflections Video 1.